My neighbors aren't the same anymore. This happened when I was still a kid, around 11 years old. I lived in a small town with my mom, my dad, and my little brother. In the house across the street lived my best friend, Tyler. He lived with his mom, dad, and older sister. The focus isn't on my family, but on Tyler's. They were chaotic. The father was an alcoholic, constantly arguing with his wife. The mother was almost always in a bad mood. There was always something to stress about. And the older sister, she was going through that rebellious teenage phase. She isolated herself in her room, blasted loud music, and complained about everything. It was a loud, confusing, unpredictable house. But it had always been that way for as long as I could remember, until one night something happened, and they were never the same again. I woke up in the middle of the night needing to go to the bathroom. As I passed by the window, I saw that the lights downstairs in Tyler's house were on. When I came back, Mrs. Mason was in the backyard. Probably the cat had escaped again. Wouldn't be the first time. I watched through the window as she called out the cat's name. The night was cold, the street drowned in darkness. She wore one of those classic mom robes from old sitcoms, and the sound of the wind rustling the trees was the only thing to be heard, until a loud clatter of metal echoed from the back of the house. I froze. She hesitated, then decided to go check it out. Even just watching, a deep fear settled in my chest. The fear I couldn't explain. I felt she shouldn't go, that something was waiting for her, and that fear turned out to be right. From behind the house, Mrs. Mason screamed. Not just any scream, a scream of pure terror. And quickly it turned into pain. Something or someone had done something to her. She wouldn't stop screaming. The house, which had been dark, suddenly lit up. Mr. Mason flung the front door open and ran to the backyard. Then his screams came too. Screams of despair and pain, just like his wife's. And suddenly, everything stopped. Silence fell. A silence so thick even the crickets didn't dare break it. The strangest thing was that, even with those screams echoing through the night, no other house seemed to light up. No one came outside. No living soul appeared. It was as if only I and Mr. Mason had heard them. The door to the house stayed open. But even with all the lights on, the inside seemed filled with a heavy darkness, like the night itself had entered the home. I wanted to get away. I wanted to close the curtain and run to bed. But I couldn't. It was like something held me there, frozen at the window. The only thing I could hear was my own breath, shaky and uneven. Then the lights in the house began to turn off one by one, left to right, from top to bottom. Tyler's room went dark, then the parents', then the living room, and finally, the kitchen. The night, once heavy, seemed calm again. The wind picked up once more. I could breathe again. Felt like I hadn't in hours. That's when I noticed. The living room light was back on. And there, standing in the window, was the silhouette of Mrs. Mason. Still, staring at me. I couldn't make out her face, but I knew it was her. The slam of the door echoed down the street. It was enough to make me step back from the window, run to bed, and hide under the covers. But even there, I could feel her watching me, from across the street, all night long. I woke up the next day. Everything felt so calm. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed it, but my body still carried that strange chill, as if the night was still with me. I went to the window, as if something were pulling me there. The Mason house looked normal. Too normal. Mrs. Mason was in the garden, watering some flowers that, as far as I could remember, were all dry the day before. She wore the same robe as always. Across the yard, Tyler's father was mowing the lawn with a smile on his face. The same man who used to be sprawled on the couch with a beer bottle every Saturday morning. And the daughter, the rebellious one, the one always locked in her room blasting loud music, was now sitting on the porch, wearing a floral dress, brushing her hair, and reading an old decorating magazine. It looked like a scene out of an old commercial. Something was wrong, very wrong. Mrs. Mason saw me. She waved, a wide smile, from ear to ear. I closed the curtain and went downstairs for breakfast. My parents and brother were already seated. My mother talked about things from the market. My father played with my little brother, feeding him. And I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Mom, I began, hesitant. Didn't you hear anything last night? They all looked at me. What do you mean? Sounds from the Mason's house. Screams. I swear I heard them. She let out a soft laugh. Must have been a dream, sweetheart. But my dad, spreading butter on his bread, commented. Now that you mention it, their house has been weird lately. My mom nodded. True. This morning, when I went to get the paper, they were, I don't know, too nice. And no morning fights, my dad added with a muffled laugh. Not even loud music from the girl, my mom said, grabbing the kettle. They became the perfect family overnight. They laughed, but I didn't, because I knew something was seriously wrong with that house. And no one seemed to really care. They found it funny, but I knew what I had seen. Tyler showed up later asking me to play. It would help distract me, or maybe even get me some answers. He was coming down the street, and behind him, in front of the house, Mrs. Mason kept staring at me while smiling. Next to her was Amber, and I swear I had never seen that girl truly smile before. But now she was smiling, just like her mother. Mrs. Mason asked her son where he was going. She spoke so calmly, so serenely, it gave me more chills than if she had screamed. Even from a good distance, you could hear her voice clearly. We're going to the park, Mommy, Tyler replied, turning to her. That's when Amber opened her mouth. May I come with you, little brother? Immediately, my stomach twisted. Amber never wanted to leave the house, never volunteered for anything, especially not to hang out with us. Tyler hesitated, but covered it with a smile. No need. We're just going to play a bit. They seemed to accept that, but as we walked away, I had that feeling again. The one of being watched. No one else was on the streets. But I knew they were still watching me. We got to the park and tried to play like always. We got on the swings, tossed stones into the pond, and even raced each other to the far side. For a moment, it all felt normal. Tyler was the same as always, laughing at the silliest things, making up stories about invisible monsters in the park, and talking about the cartoon he had watched last night. I felt a bit more at ease because at least Tyler seemed to be the same. But something seemed to be bothering Tyler. He kept glancing around, like someone was about to show up. I used that discomfort to ask about last night. I asked if he thought his family was acting differently, and he just looked confused, asking what I meant. You know, they're different. Way nicer and happier, I said, explaining the weirdness. I made sure to mention their smiles, those strange smiles. But he played dumb and said, maybe they're just trying to be a better family, which would be a strange thing to do overnight, so suddenly and abruptly. I mentioned what had happened the night before. Tyler's mom leaving late at night, the loud noise, the screams. I told him everything. Tyler just looked at me with a confused face. He said my dreams were always pretty weird anyway. That was the worst part. Not even my best friend believed me. Maybe it was a nightmare, but I'm sure it wasn't. Suddenly, everything went cold, and I got chills down my spine. I didn't know who or why, but I felt watched again. I tried to keep the conversation going, but that feeling was the worst. It wouldn't leave me alone. I gave in. I asked if we could leave. But even so, the feeling followed me all the way home. We didn't talk much on the way. I just wanted to get out of there. And Tyler seemed kind of quiet too. Maybe he was just tired, or maybe he noticed how uncomfortable I was. But he didn't say anything. I got home, had lunch with my family, and tried to go on with the day like nothing happened. But the feeling of being watched still clung to me, like it was stuck to my skin. The afternoon dragged on, and at night, I had dinner in silence. My parents talked to each other, and my little brother was drawing something in his notebook. Then it was time for bed. Again, I woke up in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, I knew what to expect. It was like something was pulling me toward the window to peek out. I moved slowly, hoping there would be nothing there, hoping I could just go back to sleep afterward. And I jumped when I saw Mr. Mason staring at me from his lawn. I quickly left the window and ran to bed, crawling under the covers, facing the wall. But I didn't know I would regret that. Everything was so quiet. I could hear my heart pounding, the wind blowing, my heavy breathing, and again that feeling of being watched, but a little different this time. I felt like the thing was close. I felt like it was right behind me. I heard a different sound, right behind me, the sound of wood creaking, and a chill ran through my whole body. I was panicking. Felt like there was a monster right behind me, and it knew I wasn't asleep. It was just waiting for the moment I turned so it could attack me. The feeling was terrible. The noises wouldn't stop. There was something behind me. I was sure of it. It got to the point I couldn't tell if it was touching my back or if it was just my blanket. Then I felt something in my hair. Thin, small, something moving on my head. Curiosity took over. Fear consumed me. If I turned around, he would catch me. But if I didn't, he still would. So almost on impulse, I turned around. And there was nothing. No one. And what had touched my hair was a spider. Of course I got scared, messing up my hair trying to get the spider out. But I think I'd never been so happy to have a spider on my head. I turned my back to the wall again, trying to sleep, knowing I wouldn't be surprised again. The night passed. The previous ones had been strange, but the next ones were just as unsettling.